Alright guys, it's Chatterbox Reviews, coming at you guys with a review for House of the Dragon, Season 1, Episode 8. This one's titled The Lord of the Tides, and once again I'm joined by my friend Greg for this one.
Good to be here.
So we've missed the last couple episodes here. It was episodes 6 and 7, the last couple of weeks, and we figured instead of doing kind of a late review for, I guess, both of them, really, we thought we would just, come out with this review, try to be a little earlier in the week. But I wanted to start this one off just quickly sharing our thoughts, just very briefly, on those two episodes, because I'm sure, and I'm sure within this episode we'll talk and we'll make reference to some of the stuff in those anyways. But yeah, so I think we'll just start off with the overall thoughts here. Then of course we'll get into a bit of a recap and share our thoughts on this episode. Then we'll give a spoiler warning for that. So before we go into any of the spoiler stuff, we'll let you know. And then, if you haven't seen it, definitely come back once you have. So, okay. So in terms of episode 6, in my thoughts, I thought this was a solid episode, introducing us to basically this new era in the show, in many ways, because, or I guess even the series, as a whole, as we go on, most of the content is going to be within this new era rather than the first 5 episodes. So we get the new actors, of course, which Greg and I talked about lots, leading up with Olivia Cook, Emma Darcy, and then, of course, some of these actors who have actually come in episodes 6 and 7, and then new ones again now in this one. For a lot of the kids. And to me, I just thought this was kind of a bit of a bridge episode. Again, just introducing us to this new timeline and kind of building things that are just setting up what's to come later in the season. And we already see some payoffs in episode 7 for what episode 6 set up. So yeah, I just viewed it as more of an introductory episode. Wasn't anything special to me, but I thought it was really great at what it was trying to do. And Greg, what did you what did you think
Yeah,
of episode
yeah.
6?
I mean, it was very much like a kind of a repilot, right? A pilot for the second half of the season,
Right.
and all the new aged up characters and the new characters that we have in this episode. Like a lot happens. I think that they're covering a lot in this episode. You have 3 main characters dying, or 3 main-ish characters, kind of supporting characters, I guess, really. And that so a lot happens, but yeah, it's very much setting up this next, like you said, this next era of the show. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I liked that all the new actors and actresses, and they all did a good job. Obviously, we only had the child actors, like the teen actors for just those 2 episodes, but I thought they did a good job of setting the stage for their character going forward.
Right.
And yeah, no, I just agree. I think it was good. A lot happened, but I think that it was handled pretty well.
Right. Yeah, and you do make a good point. Of course, the whole move by Lara Strong at the end, that was kind of a big moment there. And again, I'm sure we'll come back to that as we talk about this one. So yeah, and then in terms of episode 7, I told Greg before we started, but I think this is probably the weakest episode of the season to me. So far, first of all, I think everyone was talking about it, but the cinematography, or I guess just photography kind of in general. So the choice to substitute day for night is obviously not new. A lot of shows have done it. I'm sure House of the Dragon has even done it, or if they haven't, Game of Thrones for sure did. But just the way it kind of actually played out, just didn't look all that great. I'm not sure if it was maybe the effects that they used in post production here with the lighting, but yeah, it didn't look all that great. Now this was only like maybe a third of the episode really that this stood out, so it wasn't a huge problem, but that obviously is pretty noticeable. But in terms of the writing, I thought some of it just felt a little bit rushed. The first half of the episode with kind of the funeral did feel a little bit kind of a somber, kind of a slower pace, and then the second half of the episode, especially with the Rhaenyra and Daemon dynamic there, to me just felt a little bit rushed. I felt like maybe we could have started that a little earlier in the episode and maybe paced it a little bit better. But that was just my opinion. It's still a good episode, though. Still a lot of stuff I enjoyed, and definitely important for what we see in this episode. But Greg, what were your thoughts on episode 7 then, Driftmark?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, obviously, some of these scenes, particularly between Rhaenyra and Daemon. And then for me, the as well the scene where Aemond claims Vhagar. Obviously, all these occurring in the show at night, but obviously they filmed it during the day. Was a little bit difficult to see at times. I think it was, from what I've heard, it was kind of designed for very kind of high quality, like 4K resolution television. So, which obviously that you shouldn't do that. The majority of the population doesn't have that. But so yeah, but I think aside from that, I really liked it. I didn't probably think it was the weakest for sure of the set. I thought I liked a lot of moments, to be honest. It was probably certainly in the upper half of my kind of episode tiering. Probably thought the scene where Aemond claims Vhagar is great, and kind of the fallout from that with his nephews and his cousins, and where he then obviously loses an eye, and then the whole scene where they're in the Great Hall at Driftmark, and everything comes to light about what happened, and there's this back and forth between Alicent and Rhaenyra and the king, and then the children get involved, and obviously it comes to its climax with Alicent basically trying to take an eye from Lucerys. So I really liked the episode in totality, and obviously at the end we get the twist, with Laenor, being killed, or allegedly being killed, and then we see the twist at the end is that he actually gets away with Carl, and conceivably is off in the free cities living his life with Carl. So I thought all of that was really good. But yeah, I really enjoyed the episode in total. But yeah, obviously the lighting at times was a bit annoying.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so those are kind of our brief thoughts on 6 and 7 there. And yeah, so let's get into episode 8 then. Like I said, the Lord of the Tides, this one titled. So yeah, do you want to start us off with a bit of a recap then? Spoiler free, and also what did you think of this episode?
Sure. Yeah. So right off the bat, we jump 6 years
Right.
from where episode 7 finishes. Rhaenyra and Daemon and her 3 sons, as well as one of Daemon's daughters, is on Dragonstone, living there, and then we have the Hightowers, obviously, Viserys, Alicent Hightower, and their children all aged up, living in at the Red Keep, and then we find out right off the bat that Corlys has taken. They've won the Battle of the Stepstones again. There was a resurgent triarchy, and they've emerged victorious. But Corlys has taken what perhaps is a fatal wound, but at the very least is one that has left him like bedridden and incredibly ill. So the question of his succession comes up. House Velaryon is one of the most powerful houses in the realm and controls the royal fleet, or at least has in the past, but certainly has the greatest fleet. And who is the next Lord of the Tides? Lord of Driftmark is incredibly important because they control a very powerful house and ally to the crown. So there's this huge succession battle. Vaemond, his brother, who we've seen in a few episodes, we saw him early on at during the Battle of the Stepstones, and then we saw him obviously last episode at the funeral where he gives a eulogy.
Right.
So we see him in the funeral during that scene in the last episode talking about the Velaryon line and everything, kind of hinting that Rhaenyra's children are perhaps not of his blood. And now he's basically outright saying it and making a claim of his own to Driftmark. And so the episode is essentially about the succession of Driftmark. And we also see the king is now on his last legs. He is horribly decrepit and is basically just bedridden all day, drinking milk of the poppy. And so Alicent and Otto basically run the kingdom for him. Vaemond makes a petition to them. And then Rhaenyra, Daemon, their children all come to King's Landing. We get everybody in one place and kind of duking it out. Like, for the first time, everybody aged up a little bit. And and then that kind of evolves. And that's more or less the episode.
Right.
Without giving any spoilers, obviously.
Right. And what were your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably one of my favorite episodes, certainly of this time jump, or like the big time jump, the character switch of these last three episodes. I thought it was really good. I thought the music was excellent. I thought the politics of this was very good. I thought Patty Considine was excellent in this episode too. Um, yeah, I mean, I like the aged up actors. I think people are going to really hate a lot of the Greens, Allison's children. I think obviously just naturally people are going to probably gravitate more to the blacks with just they're more pleasant, frankly, and they're more kind of likable. But I like the dynamic that we have between them and I mean, I don't know if you want me to get into spoilers here, but
Not yet, not yet.
yeah, so just the way that all evolves, the succession evolves, and then the end too, like, kind of towards the end. But yeah, I thought it was really well done, directed well, music was really good, acting was good. So probably one of my favorite episodes.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely my favorite of these last few as well. I thought it was just such an enthralling episode. I think the runtime was about an hour and 7 minutes, or hour six
Yeah.
minutes, and it flew by to me. Like it was already. I think the first time I checked the time, it was like 50 minutes already had passed. So
Hmm.
that's what I noted. I just was like really, intrigued, really immersed in this episode. I guess I am in most episodes, anyways. But lots of tension, I thought too. Especially again, no spoilers yet, but in the later scenes when all of the family is together, I thought there's a lot of good tension there. And to me, this episode very much felt like kind of the calm before the storm. In a lot of ways, where well, obviously, well, towards the end of the episode we see that things are going to heat up in the next couple, but it really did feel like kind of just before things are really about to kick off, and I thought it was really great in that way. Like you, I also really like all of the older versions of the kids, particularly Amond. I think he just was really cool, and really looking forward to see what they have in store for that character, going forward in this Civil War. So, yeah, really, really high on this one. Really enjoyed it as well. So, okay, so now we'll give a spoiler warning. So we'll get into some details here of the episode. And yeah, so as you already mentioned, Greg, that is it a 6 year time jump here between 7 and 8 about?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's about 6 years. And so presumably this would be like the last time jump, or at least the last like kind of
Yeah.
significant one like that. Now we're kind of just going with it with this timeline here because now things are really happening. And so now I can say it. So at the end of the episode with Viserys, appears to die, and in the teaser for next episode we kind of get that confirmed anyways. So now with Viserys gone, it really does seem like things are now going forward, and we won't have to do any more time jumps or any skips like that, because all the characters are aged up as well, I think, as you mentioned. So 6 years later, we start, like you said, we get the news that Corlys has been seriously injured, out at sea, which brings up this kind of question of his succession, who will be the heir to Driftmark. And it is a question, but it almost has been, there's already an answer there, and that, Lucerys, or Luke, he already has the claim. Right, like that's already been established. He has the strongest claim, but it is Vaemond, who is Corlys' brother, that kind of says that he is going to challenge, his claim to the throne because he's not a true Valyrian, and so of course we see later in the episode, that he straight up calls them bastards. So this is definitely kind of the crux of his whole argument or his whole petition here, is that they're not real Valyrians, and so to keep the throne Driftmark in House Valyrian, he wants to then take the throne for himself because he is, I would presume, really like the only true blood of left, in the Valyrian thing, or at least they kind of in place to take the throne there. So it really kind of forms three different camps at the start of the episode, at least, which is Vaemond, Rhaenyra, which is basically Lucerys, right? She's kind of speaking for him, and then also Rhaenys. So it was great to see Rhaenys. She had a kind of a big role in this episode. And like I said, at the beginning of the episode, it almost kind of plants it like that she's gonna go for the throne herself. In the episode, but of course later on she kind of teams with Rhaenyra. But yeah, so that's kind of where we start off with this one. So okay, so then like you said, Rhaenyra and Daemon hear the news from it was Baela, which she's the eldest daughter, right, of Daemon and
I
Lena.
think they're twins.
Oh,
They're twins in the book. They're
Okay.
twins in the book, so I'm assuming
Okay.
they're twins in this as well.
Okay. 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 That makes sense. That makes sense. So, Baela is the one who actually lets them know of this, which I thought was interesting because I mean, I guess it is, Daemon is Baela's dad, and but she is, very much, living with Rhaenys in Driftmark,
Hmm.
so they do kind of set that up that they are, separated there, and Rhaenys definitely is, depending on her, in a lot of ways. So. Um,
Yeah, I think the way they've been kind of setting this up now as from the point of Damon and Rhaenyra marrying and the time jump, I think during that time, the way I interpreted it is that their children have grown pretty close. Um, so I think Baela, obviously, she's a ward to Rhaenys, but I think she still obviously feels quite a bit of loyalty towards Damon and Rhaenyra, and then by proxy, her cousin Lucerys. Well, not actually her cousin, but her cousin. Her alleged cousin Luke Lucerys.
right.
So I think that's kind of part of it too. I think she kind of is. I think very much that kind of became one family.
Right. Yep. Yep. And then and who is so Baela who what is her sister's name again? Then the twin
Rhaena.
sister, I guess. Oh, Rhaena. Okay. And so she is living at Dragonstone then, I think, as you mentioned. So
Yeah, I mean we don't see her there, but I think that's fair to say
right.
because during the scene with Rhaenyra and Rhaenys, basically Rhaenys says, "Oh, you brought my granddaughter to soften my resolve." So
Exactly,
brought
yeah.
meaning they were on Dragonstone together, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. So then, of course, when Rhaenyra and Daemon hear this news, we also see that Daemon, goes and takes a dragon egg as well. Now, is that on Dragonstone that happens?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. And that's Cyrax's, or Cyrax that lays that egg.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so he goes, takes the dragon egg, obviously to put then with the baby that Rhaenyra is holding right now. She's pregnant again. And so we also get that. I thought that was worth mentioning too. So yeah, so they visit Viserys then once they get to King's Landing. I thought this was kind of a good scene. Of course, kind of gets us up to speed with what the kind of state of things is in the Red Keep. And so obviously he's in very bad shape to say the least. And he's kind of being kept sedated with the smoke of the poppy by Alicent and Otto, or at least it seems like they're kind of the ones pushing for that. And they're effectively ruling the realm in his place. Both of them, we even see at these small council meetings. I mean, Alicent is sitting, in his chair. Otto right next to her as the hand. So that's very clear that they're the ones that are really calling the shots here. And like you said, Viserys is very much bedridden. So Rhaenyra introduces Viserys to Daemon and her, young children. I believe the one boy's named Aegon as well, and then the other one is, of course, named Viserys. And I think he comments, on the name. And then, of course, she's pregnant with another, I think, which they kind of allude to there. But, obviously in this scene, he doesn't really seem, lucid enough to really, he makes a comment about the name, but he doesn't really understand, what they're telling him. And I think they pick up on that pretty quickly. And we even see, when finally Alicent comes to greet them, they, obviously accuse her. And I really like the way that Daemon just says things plainly. In a lot of these scenes in this episode, I thought, like, everyone is kind of, like, dancing around, things. I don't even think Rhaenyra quite, makes the accusation against Alicent that she's doing this to Viserys, but Daemon just comes out and says it right away to her. And I really like that, the way that's working now with his character.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think seeing Viserys in that state, I think that was kind of a good introduction to seeing just how much he has declined even in the last 6 years. I mean, obviously he was in a bad place 6 years ago, but he was still walking. He was still lucid and conversational. Had a grasp on things, and now he's basically a walking corpse, I think.
Right.
So yeah, I think that the exchange between Daemon and Rhaenyra and Alicent, that was really, really good. And we also hear that a lot of the Targaryen heraldry and different kind of Targaryen relics have been taken down, and it's a lot of faith of the seven kind of religious artifacts and symbols and whatnot. So I think that's a kind of an interesting change, obviously. And we might see that assert itself. Maybe the faith comes into play here at some point on the side of the high towers of Greens. Potentially, if we get some Old Town
of Jonathan Pryce, the Walk of Shame.
Yeah, potentially we could get something not quite like that, but certainly somewhat of a. Certainly, I think we'll get a High Septon who potentially sides with the Greens. I think is absolutely on the table. Yeah, and then I think they also they're a little bit dubious of the Maesters. I think so, which I think is kind of an interesting wrinkle because obviously where the Maesters trained, they're trained in Old Town, which is the seat that the Hightowers rule over,
right,
or the city that they rule over. Which I think is an interesting wrinkle, and perhaps a conspiracy that perhaps maybe the Maesters worsened his condition, or at least didn't early on make the proper judgment calls on how to treat his ailments. So I think that's kind of an interesting wrinkle. Yeah, I think enjoyed all of that. Obviously, that small council meeting, we got some new faces. We got I believe that's Lord Wilde, who was sitting to the right of Lord Beesbury, or I think he's the new Lord of, or Master of Laws rather. Obviously, we got Tyland Lannister. We have a new Maester. I believe he was in the last episode as well. But so yeah, I just think that was a good opening sequence.
Yeah, it was kind of. I think it was a good idea to kind of show us that small council meeting. And yeah, kind of get us up to speed with who's there and what's going on. So before the kind of proceedings, which I'll call it, basically the scene where Vaemon, and everyone makes their kind of petition to the throne. But before that kind of kicks off, Rhaenyra goes to Rhaenys, so you alluded to this scene already, and offers basically a deal for her. So basically, for Rhaenys, right, to back Rhaenyra's son, Lucerys' claim, in exchange for, that Rhaenyra's granddaughters will marry Rhaenyra's sons. So that's kind of the the kind of deal on the table. And as we see in this scene, Rhaenys doesn't seem it doesn't seem like she's really gonna accept. I think she says, that it doesn't matter anyways. Which I really like the way that they've, taken Rhaenys here, because in a lot of ways she's right. I mean, because we have a feeling for what's about to happen here, and even though she backs Lucerys' claim to Driftmark, it's not really going to change what the future of things and how things are going to play out on a large, in a significant way at least. And so I really like the way that they played her character, and that she's from the start. I mean, we've seen multiple scenes now with her knowing exactly where this is going and what's going to happen. Of course, she can't really do much about it, but I just like that she's kind of been, seeing this for a long time. And a lot of the other characters we see are a little more naive, I would say. Especially Corlys was in those scenes that she had with him. about what's going to happen. So thought that was interesting. Of course, this kind of flips later in the episode, but an important thing to kind of set up what that, where that was. And then the one thing I want to mention before we then get to the proceedings with Vayman is this kind of emotional scene that we see with Rhaenyra going to Viserys, and asking him to back her, right? To basically, show up and back her, or effectively back Lucerys, his claim. And, she basically tells him that this is a large burden, to be this heir to the throne. And if he wants her to really do it and really take on this burden, then he should be there supporting her. Now in this scene, again, both these scenes kind of have a different effect, because in this scene, I mean, Viserys is, again, barely lucid. I think he may even be like asleep, really. But we see that this scene also affects then what plays out later. So they kind of twist these things a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was great to see Rhaenyra just be so vulnerable about everything. And I think this is especially, it comes on the heels of her making a pretty sound proposal to Rhaenys, trying to make an ally at court, and just basically getting shut down. I think she's just so tired of having to continually try to make alliances and play the game, play the politics of everything, when she feels like she was named heir. That seemed like it would be a big deal. Okay, but she still kind of has to play politics. Okay, her son's the heir. Well, no, it's kind of in doubt. Now she has got to play politics. There's just one thing after another with her claim, her son's claim. And so I think this scene is just really, encapsulates just all her fatigue over this,
right,
over this constant battle. And, it sets up a really good payoff during the petition hearing.
Right. And I'm assuming that you'd like to see more of Rhaenys in this episode as well. I think you commented a little bit on that in past episodes.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think Rhaenys, that is.
Yeah, Rhaenys. Yeah.
Yeah, I think she's just been great. Any scene we have her and Corlys together, apart, they're just very interesting. I think figures, and both portrayed quite well by their actors.
Yeah, I think Eve Best does a great job, and of course she has a lot to do in this episode. Also, I wanted to comment, and we'll get to that now, I guess, with the proceedings. But I thought the actor for Vayman did a really great job this episode. What a great kind of role for him. I mean, for that actor to get what was really a small role in the grand scheme of things, but in this episode he had a lot to do, and I think he really did a good job. Really impressive. So did want to comment on that. So okay, so now we get to the proceedings, and we see that Otto is basically the one that's going to oversee the proceedings in Viserys's place. And obviously I think this is pretty accustomed, right? I mean, he's the hand, so if Viserys is not able to, he's
yeah. I mean, we saw Ned Stark do this as well,
right,
during season 1, and like it's definitely not. It's not like he's this is something illegal or treason or anything. This is pretty normal, and I think it's safe to say he's been doing this probably for the last few months to years, just sitting in for Viserys.
Right, exactly. So we kind of see that. We see, Vayman makes his petition first, and just overall in this entire scene, we get the idea, very much that Otto and Alicent are very much, they're definitely leaning towards Vayman, and this kind of tension is basically around this entire scene. So
I mean, we see earlier in the episode when Vayman arrives at King's Landing at the Red Keep, he immediately gets a meeting with them and basically tells them his intentions, pleads his case. So this is really just for show at this point. He's already he's shored up their vote. This is just very much for the grandeur of it all, for the performance, to show everyone else that it was legitimate.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So that's kind of the kind of feeling of this entire scene surrounding it. But so Vayman makes this petition. Of course, it's all based around the fact that Rhaenyra's, son, Lucerys, is not a true Valyrian, and that Driftmark, should be kept, in the Valyrian bloodline. But he doesn't come out and say that yet. I mean, he's kind of alluding to it, and then he kind of dances around it. Rhaenyra kind of almost dares him to say it, but he doesn't say it yet. Of course, later on he does, but so he doesn't say it yet. So then they let Rhaenyra go, but there's some back and forth, of course, there between Vaemon and her before that. So she starts making her petition, and she gets barely into it when Viserys interrupts it, and he, shocks everyone, the viewers, everyone there, by actually showing up to this hearing. So, I think you made a comment about the music. This was one of the scenes that really stuck out to me with the score for this episode. Just an awesome music, with Viserys, kind of this like epic thing, and it's really like this almost humiliating kind of walk of him, obviously very decrepit, barely able to walk towards the throne, but it's kind of this epic music playing because of how, big of a deal it is that he actually showed up and he's taking back this throne. This very much reminded me, we were talking about, Rings of Power and that, Lord of the Rings. A big scene in that is when the king is very decrepit and he kind of course they break the spell and he comes back, and it almost seemed like a similar type of scene in the way this plays out. But yeah, so Otto's kicked out of the throne. He's stands beside Alicent there, and Viserys eventually, with help from Daemon as well, who picks up the crown when it falls, he sits on the throne. So yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was great. One of the best scenes of the show, I think, so far. Just this huge triumphant return. Yeah, like you said, it's humiliating. But I think at this point he knows he's got really nothing to lose. I mean, he stands up for what is his favorite child. Let's be honest. We've seen enough to say that he believes really Rhaenyra. He believes in her, and he really feels like she's his child, whereas he maybe didn't have as much of a hand in raising his other 3 kids or 4 kids, and as we might talk about later, but the 3 kids that are there. But yeah, I think just amazing, the music, everything, his walk, just everyone's face, like especially Otto and Alicent. Just
right.
This is not something that they had a contingency plan for. And then I think from there, we know as long as he doesn't die in the process of walking up to the throne, I think we all know how this is going to end. Exactly. He's going to back Rhaenyra and Lucerys. And yeah, the scene the moment where Daemon puts the crown back on his head, awesome, great. And then he says this thing is a farce, like Lucerys Velaryon is the heir and everything, and he confirms him. And yeah, I mean, I think it's great. I think it's really a really great moment for the character. It's kind of his final stand, and he supports his daughter and her sons, and it's just a really good moment, really good scene.
And you obviously see then the effect of that scene with Rhaenyra earlier, kind of making that plea to him. Whether that all synced in at that point, I'm not sure, but obviously it made some effect, because then he obviously comes out, and I think there was some foreshadowing though to this entrance as well, because in a couple scenes before this we do see that he refuses, I think, the milk of the poppy for that day, like he doesn't want that because of his kids are there. So we kind of
he's talking about having a big dinner, so clearly has a little bit more energy or gusto. So.
Right, yeah. So we kind of, you could see this maybe happening, but still, again, like you said, definitely a huge scene, and really well directed too. I thought, all the kind of, the pacing leading up and then the scene was really great. So, so like you said, obviously backs Lucerys' claim, and then of course this kind of depends though too on Rhaenys, who accepts Rhaenyra's offer of the marriage and also, reinforces that, yeah, Lucerys does have the claim and that he should take the throne. So obviously the kind of stuff they set up early in the episode of her going for the throne herself, she does not do that in this scene, and she kind of sticks with the offer that Rhaenyra makes.
Yeah,
Um,
I think
so
that I think she was probably always going to back Bael. Like, let's say she didn't. Let's say Viserys never came. I think ultimately she was actually going to back Bael. I don't think she was going to try to take it for herself,
oh, okay,
because
okay.
we remember in episode six, or 6 or 7, she's talking to Corlys about his succession at the time, and she's talking about how it should not be Lucerys or any of Rhaenyra's children. It should be Baela.
Right. Yep.
It should pass through Laena's children. So
Yep.
I think that was probably what her plan was. But yeah, I mean, I think as soon as she sees Viserys make his declaration, I think she realizes that she's got to get it on the right side of this.
Right. Yeah.
She
Yeah.
clearly has no love
Yeah.
for Rhaenyra. She thinks Rhaenyra killed her son, or had her son killed. So she's wise enough to know which way the winds are blowing.
Right. Yep. Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a good point. So, obviously, then we see the big kind of payoff here in this scene is Vaemond is furious with Viserys, who, like I said, reinforced Viserys' claim. And here it is. Now he finally says it. He calls Rhaenyra's children bastards. Which is pretty epic. Pretty epic to like hear the line. And like I said, I think the actor did a fantastic job. So then we kind of see this, reaction of Viserys, and everyone is just taken aback. I like that that we actually hear some like gasps in the background after he
Yeah,
says bastards. So Viserys threatens to take his tongue for what he said, and doesn't matter because Daemon comes in from behind him and just like, I mean, could you even really say this is a beheading? Because not really, right? It wasn't even like his whole head that he took off of
it's
his neck.
yeah, it was at like an angle. Yeah,
Yeah. So, and then, favorite line of the episode, Damon says he can keep his tongue.
yeah,
Yeah, really epic, really, really great move by Damon there. And again, like I said earlier in the episode, he just basically tells Allison exactly what everyone else was thinking, and in this scene, he just does pretty much whatever everyone else wanted to do at this point to Damon, or to Vaemon, and basically taking care of him in that sense.
yeah,
So yeah, just a crazy crazy scene.
yeah. It was pretty amazing. I mean, also Vaymond also calls Rhaenyra a whore as well. But I mean,
Right.
I think it probably was enough to with the bastards. Um, but yeah, great, and I think it's a great showcase of Valyrian steel too, because there's arguments maybe like, oh, that didn't really look realistic. It was such a clean cut, but Valyrian steel is the sharp, effectively the sharpest steel, kind of sharpest element in the world. And it's obviously fantasy, so it's not anything. There's no real world comparison. But I think it was just a great showcase of seeing how Valyrian steel cuts. It just like cuts his head, cuts half of his head like just like butter right through,
Yeah.
which I thought was cool because we haven't really seen that at play as much. We've seen Daemon fight, but it's more he's not cutting people in half. He's kind of stabbing them or cutting off their arm maybe. But this was a great showcase for that, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and we see him like cut up the crab feeder too. Is he using Valerian steel with that as well?
Oh, when he pulls out the top, yeah, I imagine it's the same sword. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I imagine he had Dark Sisters there as well. That's true.
Yeah. So yeah. Yeah. Crazy, crazy way to end that. Pretty awesome. And I think we do see another scene. I didn't think it was, a big scene or anything, but we do see Rhaenys kind of looking at Vaemon's body when they're kind of fixing him up as well. And I thought that was an important scene probably for Rhaenys' character. Just in the way I think she, was saying that she's, really familiar with death at this point, or
Hmm.
something along those lines. Do you remember what she said there, or?
Yeah, something like the stranger has visited me. which is like
Right.
the kind of god of death, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And so I thought that was a good scene too. And like it really, right? If you put it in perspective, I mean, she's lost her daughter, her son, and now, I guess her brother-in-law. I'm not,
Yeah,
I can't imagine she was that, as close to him as her kids, but wow. I mean, she really has lost a lot. So yeah, I thought that was an important scene for her character, but um, okay, so now let's get to the kind of dinner scene at the end of the episode here, which I thought this is just such a good way of building tension here. And it wasn't even that big of a payoff at the end. I mean, no one died, no one got injured or anything, but I was like kind of on the edge of my seat this entire scene, waiting for something like that to happen. Because of kind of what they built up here. So, yeah, so the whole family sits down together for this dinner. It's not even, I mean, it's like really all of the families. I think Otto, Alicent are there, obviously, and Alicent and Viserys' kids. And then, of course, Rhaenyra and Daemon's kids, and then Rhaenyra and Laenor's kids. Is that everybody? Am I missing anybody else that was there?
yeah. I mean, Damon and Lena's two daughters, but yeah,
Right, right, and them too, yeah.
all the kids, who aren't babies were there.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, so this is a big scene between all of them. And then Viserys joins them. So he kind of makes another bit of an entrance. And he makes this kind of last ditch plea for all of them just to get along. And it really is kind of this tragic scene, to me at least, because it's, he's making this claim and you see it's coming from such a good place. I mean, he really does just want everybody to get along and put aside all this, the differences and division. But it's tragic in the sense that that it's just not gonna happen. I mean, it's just not realistic at this point for this to happen and for them. And even then, we see Rhaenyra kind of take the first step and toasting Alicent, and we see kind of a bit of a apology or a bit of a sympathy for each other between these characters, but it's not gonna last, right? It's this kind of like I said, very much the calm before the storm here of what's gonna happen. But yeah, obviously you just feel kind of bad for Viserys too, because he's just trying to unite everybody and keep everything together, and it's doomed to fail at this point.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was great. I mean, everybody seems, especially like the adults, everybody seems to be getting along. The kids, obviously, Aegon tries to get on Jace's to get on his nerve a little bit, but Jace is very
Yeah.
kind of controls himself and collects himself and also makes a toast of his own, and everybody seems to be getting along. And then Jason and Helena start dancing. There's music playing, and there's this great shot of Viserys looking out at Jason, Helena, his daughter and grandson, and they're dancing, having a nice time. And he's looking around. Everybody seems to be having a nice, harmonious dinner, and he just has this last smile, and then he kind of has to leave because he's dying. But
Right.
he has this final last moment of just thinking that everything is good, thinking that maybe that they have mended the fences here, which is obviously not true. But
Right.
in this fleeting moment, it seems that way, and then obviously everything's going well. Viserys goes to bed, and then the pig comes out. The
Right.
kind of
Right.
probably the main course of this meal, and it's put directly in front of Aemond. And obviously, if we go back to episode 6, is when his brother and his two nephews play the joke on him of
Oh.
saying they have a dragon form. It's the pink dread. It's this pig.
Right.
So
Right.
it's hard to say if did they tell the servers to put it in front of him. I think probably not. I think it was probably just happenstance. And then when Luke sees that, he's just like, oh my god, that's funny. He's not like, I planned this. But Aemon he sees him laughing at him, and he kind of loses it and
Right.
makes this toast. Starts out seems pretty nice, handsome, wise. Then he kind of takes a pause and says strong. Now, obviously, this is alluding to
Yeah.
their parentage, their father. Harwin Strong. Says it a couple times, and then things kind of break out. The two of them get in the four boys really get in a bit of a tussle. But it's
Yeah.
it kind of calms down. But clearly we see Alice and Rhaenyra have passed on this grudge to their children. I think they may have gotten over it for the moment, but they see the ramifications of their grudge and the fact that their children have this genetic grudge through them,
Right.
which I thought was really well done. And obviously that's also straight right out of the book, the Strong speech, but I think it was done really well.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think he kind of nailed that. And but yeah, that was good too. I mean, I think we're seeing, and then even at the end of that scene, we see Rhaenyra and Alicent. Looks like Alicent implores her to stay. She's like, "I'll take the kids back,
Right.
but I'll come back." So everything's still, this was a fight, but they're young. It's not like anybody killed somebody. They're just fighting. So they kind of brush it off. I think as the adults kind of brush it off. But in this next scene, clearly this is not the end of it. And as a side note as well, when you were talking about Alicent's toast, she says that Rhaenyra will make a fine queen. So she very much, at least in this instance, publicly affirms Rhaenyra's, inheritance. So I thought that was of note as well, especially given the end of or how the episode ends.
Yep. Yeah. I think you did a good job of what a sequence. And I think actor's name for Aemon is Ewan Mitchell. I think he did a fantastic job with this episode. Loved him in this scene, and like you said, the speech, he nailed that. Just the kind of delivery there was perfect, and it even took me a second too. Like when he first said strong, I was like, oh, okay, yeah, like, he's just saying they're strong, and then it kind of clicked for me, and I was like, oh shit, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that was great, and so the one thing I did want to add to that kind of sequence at the end is I think it's before even Alicent and Rhaenyra have that small exchange. It's this scene between Daemon, just this moment really, between Daemon and Aemon, and so Daemon kind of. I don't maybe is the word is to hold back, I guess, or kind of holds back Lucerys.
I think he tries to mediate it and tells him to go to bed and just
right, and kind
of very much
just kind of gets in the middle, I would say. And then we get this kind of brief moment where we get Aemon kind of staring down at Daemon, and they kind of have this little kind of brief moment where they kind of stare each other down. And to me, I thought this was foreshadowing something to come, because it just seems like these two characters are almost kind of similar in a lot of ways, and yeah, it just seemed like this was gonna kind of set up a rivalry between these two characters in specific for what's gonna happen later. I really like that kind of moment between them, and I think it was from a directing standpoint, I think this was very much intentional to have this kind of brief moment between the two. But that's obviously, I don't know the material, necessarily, but that's what I would, predict at this point.
They're very much somewhat of a mirror of each other. At least, I think Daemon is very much softened. Obviously, he still cut a dude's head off in cold blood, basically, but still, I think he's softened and calmed down a little bit and become a little bit more thoughtful. And I think Aemon is very much what Daemon would have been like, probably. Perhaps a little more serious, though. I think Daemon was more of a jokester, more of a not a happy-go-lucky guy, but I think enjoyed the different aspects of his early life, whereas Aemon just seems very serious, very stoic, kind of austere.
Right.
But yeah, they're very similar, and they even look quite similar. And
right.
So that'll be interesting to see how that relationship evolves and how Aemon evolves as a character, and see what kind of role he takes on. Will he try to usurp his brother potentially, like Daemon, kind of joked about at times with his own brother? We'll see.
Right, and I mean, in a lot of ways, they're basically the number twos on either side, at least to me at this point.
Sons.
Yeah, and that well, that and well, yeah, that too, and then also, Damon is almost like right by
Oh,
Rhaenyra's side,
I yeah,
right, for taking the throne, and then
yeah,
Aegon
yeah,
taking it, so he's kind of on the side. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I don't know. I
yep,
I think there's kind of endless parallels really between these two
yeah,
at this point.
yep,
Okay, so then of course this last scene, which Viserys is back in bed. This is kind of after the dinner, not doing well. It almost seems like he's like gasping for air at this point. But he does make this one last statement, which I'm sure will prove to be very important in the grand scheme of things going forward. And he mistakenly, I think at least mistakenly, tells Alicent about the Song of Ice and Fire, and to unite the realm, fulfill kind of the prophecy. I think those are his words, some along those lines. But basically saying like you need to get Aegon on the throne, to unite the realm and all this stuff. So yeah, kind of a huge thing to say. And you see Allison when he says that. I think she even says, like, I can't remember the exact line that she says. Do you remember what she says in response?
well, would you mean like when she says, like our son? Is that what you mean?
Well, no, I think she says like "I will" or something, or like "I will
Oh, yeah,
try,"
yeah,
something
something
like
like
that.
that. Yeah, 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 something like that.
Yeah, and so you can clearly see that this is going to be a kind of probably a big thing that she'll use as kind of motivation,
Yeah,
for really kind of driving for Aegon to take the throne over Rhaenyra, right?
yeah. I mean, that's actually a big change from the book because, or not change so much as kind of elaboration. Obviously, the book is written as a history text, right? So it's written by sources, or rather written by people who weren't there and just kind of cited various sources who were kind of on the peripherals of this event. Um, so yeah, in the book is very much ambiguous. Did he want to name Aegon heir? Did he want Rhaenyra? Did Alicent and Otto just do this out of nothing? What happened? So that obviously the showrunners, writers have decided that he basically it'll be a kind of a what's the word? Just a misunderstanding, right? Alicent misinterpreting what he's saying because he's basically trying to pick up the conversation him and Rhaenyra were having a night or two ago about Aegon's dream, or the conversation she was having, and he was out cold for or whatever, just kind of, and he's kind of answering her and saying, and basically what he's saying is affirming everything that she wanted to know. It's real. He believes in her. He wants her to be the monarch. However, Alicent
Right.
obviously doesn't know any of this, doesn't know about Aegon's dream, doesn't know that they were talking, doesn't know that he thinks she's Rhaenyra, because obviously the only woman coming to his bed late at night for the last 6 years has been Alicent. So she's not assuming that he thinks he's talking to anyone else.
Right.
And she misinterprets all this for him saying that Aegon is the one to unite the realm. And I think, a way of looking at this is it might feel like a heel turn, but I think, in my opinion at least, Alicent kind of was resigned to the fact that maybe they had lost in that moment because obviously Vaemon gets killed. Vaemon would have been a huge ally for them if he was the head of House Velaryon. He's dead. Viserys is affirmed Lucerys, and obviously Rhaenyra, and now they have Rhaenys. I mean, it seems like they've kind of lost this battle at least, and it seems like she's kind of resigned to the fact that Rhaenyra is queen and heir for now, and doesn't feel like there's much she can do, especially because Alicent is always, has always been very keen on her duty, and her husband has said that Lucerys is the heir and Rhaenyra is his heir, so she kind of feels like there's not a lot she can do now. Um, you know, but obviously a day ago they were scheming to put Vaemond on the Driftwood throne, and obviously scheming to have Aegon essentially be the monarch. So clearly that thought is not completely out of her mind, and I think she's just willing to grasp onto anything. So that was kind of my interpretation of it. Um, I think it probably made sense the way they did it. To be honest with you, I think you can make a case for Alicent again trying to act in what she thinks is the best interest for the realm. I don't think it has to be a black and white conflict, but clearly
Or black
she
and
does
green.
still have a black and green. Yeah. she clearly does have some ambition still, and was really willing to grasp onto anything to put her own son and seize that power and really push Rhaenyra out. And somebody that she doesn't believe has earned this, has done her duty. So I think it works for me. For me at least, I think it works.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's kind of again like I don't know the material and I don't know how that how it changes that, but yeah, that's kind of what I got out of it. It's like um it was a mistake, but what kind of what seems like a small moment, but I think this is going to be big for kind of her, I guess, at least outlook on this and what her motivations are going to be going forward. And like you said, it makes sense because she still had these motivations before this moment. It's just that this is kind of reaffirmed that. I guess, are kind of added. So yeah, so then Viserys takes what seemed to be his final breaths. I'm not even sure what he actually says. What is his like last line? I didn't even like something about fight over, something like that.
I think
Um,
he was talking about just how the pain is over.
Pain is over. Okay,
Like
okay.
the pain is like he's finally, going to his permanent resting place. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
his pain in his human body is now over because he's dying. I think
Okay.
I believe that's what he said.
Yeah. So yeah. So then, and I really like the way that ends too. I think they cut to black, but we still kind of hear his last breaths. I thought that was just really, really effective in the way they did that. All right. So in terms of our predictions, then for the next episode, I think we talked about the teaser doesn't show all that much. It's not.
Yeah,
I think it shows a lot, but doesn't really piece things together that well.
yeah. It shows
Um,
a lot of very quick clips. Not
right.
really anything. Not any sort of scene that you can. It's just a lot of very. And there's a lot of even some clips that are like cut off in the middle of it.
Right.
There's a few things I gleaned from it just from having read the text, but without spoiling anything too far, I think you can tell right away there's a scene where we see somebody with a crown, right?
Right.
Somebody with a kind of silver gray or more of a gray crown, really. Um, so are we getting a crowning of Aegon? Perhaps we get a shot of someone grabbing Aegon as well. Looks like one of the Kingsguard. Um, what else do we have? Aemond in a cloak.
Hmm.
It's a very quick shot of Aemond. What else is there?
Yeah, I mean, well, we get scenes of like Otto kind of saying that they're shutting things down in the Red Keep. Kind of, it seems like they're up to something that they don't want anybody else to know about. That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think maybe we're gonna get, like I said, a crowning of Aegon, like very secretly, quickly, because obviously Alicent leaves Viserys and then he dies. So I think one can assume that Alicent perhaps discovers him because we get also a small council meeting. It looks like it's in the middle of the night. Um, Kristen Cole, Otto, Alicent, some of the lords potentially. Well, Lyman Beesbury certainly he gets a scene where it looks like he's yelling about they're committing treason.
Mm,
Potentially that's in reference to usurping Rhaenyra because obviously even in this episode 8 he's talking about how Laena's kids, like, of course Lucerys is the heir, so he seems firmly in line with the king and kind of conventional wisdom of Westeros, not kind of questioning any sort of illegitimacy of children or anything like that. So potentially that's what's going on here. We get somebody's, doors are being locked. Is that the Blacks? Is that Rhaenyra and her kids, or
mm.
what's going on there? Rhaenys, it looks like.
And I wonder too.
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
so Rhaenyra, um, I would assume at this point has left King's Landing then too, right? So she's
I don't
or maybe
know.
not. Okay.
I, I think it's possible. It's possible they left right after the dinner. I think it's also possible they would leave in the morning. I think that's
Hmm.
kind of an open-ended question.
Interesting.
I think
Interesting.
it could be either way. We see a woman with silver hair. I'm not sure if it's Rhaenys or Rhaenyra, because it certainly could be Rhaenys could still be there, obviously,
Yeah.
before she goes back to Driftmark. So I don't know. Yeah, I think that's fairly up in the air, actually. I think it's possible. I think it's absolutely conceivable they left immediately because of everything that happened with the kids.
Right.
I think it's absolutely possible. I think it's also possible they would just leave in the morning too. So,
right. Yeah. Very, very interesting. Things are really heating up here. With Viserys gone now. So, yeah, we'll have to see.
yeah, sorry to cut you off. As a kind of an addendum to that, the episode is called "The Green Council." So,
Yep. Yep. And
the
then
Green Council is episode 9, and then episode 10 is the Black Queen.
the
It's
Black
called.
Queen. Yep. Yep.
So kind of the two factions, perhaps anointing their respective leaders. The Green Council, Black Queen, could be interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And so, and it very much seems like season 1 is going to, basically be, the ending will pretty much be, in a way, I guess, the beginning of the Civil War. I guess you could say it's beginning now, but I think these 2 episodes will kind of build up to that point. Of course, you probably know maybe, but kind of building up to that, and then season 2, I think, will be really kind of the first look at any type of action or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the lines are definitely being drawn here early on. If I'm just guessing, I mean, I know what happens, but I don't obviously know when it happens.
Right.
So, but I think I could safely say, just as a watcher of the show, taking away having read it, that I think probably Aegon gets crowned in episode 9, and then Rhaenyra in episode 10. I mean, it's called the Black Queen. So I think that's probably where we're headed. And then I would guess early season 2, they're kind of courting supporters. That would be my guess. I think season 2 will be a lot of, making deals, carving out alliances with the High Lords, because at this point, we don't really know who's siding with who, I mean,
right.
Larys Strong probably going to be with the Greens, the Balarians going to be with the Blacks.
Yeah.
Other than that, I mean, where is the House Lannister going to go?
Yeah.
Where is House Baratheon, House Stark? If they're involved, all these major houses, obviously House Hightower obviously will be green, but a lot of huge houses that we know from Game of Thrones, that we don't necessarily know where they're going to line up, who they're going to line up with. And I think that very much will be season 2. I think it'll be a lot of, like I said, courting of different lords and really probably definitely some battles, I'd imagine, but very much, trying to really put together their entire kind of army and forces.
Yeah. Yeah. So really looking forward to the next 2 episodes. Crazy that season 1's already over, and then we'll have to wait probably quite a while for season 2. But really looking forward to it. And obviously with the success that season 1 has had, I think HBO is all in. If they weren't already at the beginning. I think the quality here is only going to go up going forward anyways, so nothing to worry about there. But anyways, that'll just about do it then, I guess, for this one. So we'll see you then next week for episode 9. Like Greg said, it's called The Green Council. Definitely looking forward to that one. Thanks for joining me on this one again, Greg.
My pleasure.
And so thanks for watching this one, and we'll see you guys then next week for episode 9.
See you then.